Hello, everyone. It is opening day of the baseball season, and we are here bringing you a special edition of Sports Speak. I'm Eddie Kalegi,
And I'm Tim Moore.
and we're joined today by Zoe Alter, who went to the Bruce Beck Sports Broadcasting Camp with us, big baseball and football fan, to help break it all down. Zoe, thanks for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to get into this.
All right, so let's get right into it with baseball. Last Monday, me and Tim talked about the 10 teams that we thought would make the playoffs. So we're going to go one step further. Tim, why don't you start? What is your World Series prediction? Who's going to match up and who's going to win it all?
I guess this is going to come with a little bit of biasness, but as I mentioned, when we were talking about our predictions about a week ago, I said, hey, I see the Yankees as a wild card team, not necessarily winning division because of their slow start history, but you think about an asterisk season, 60 games. The Yankees, when it comes to the midseason point, especially, when they get past the 80-game span, tend to really come to life. I feel like this is a Yankees year. We're now 10-plus years without a World Series. It makes me want to think that they're going to win. But on the NL side, I'm kind of, stuck a little bit of who really they're going to face, because you would think the Dodgers are going to be the premier team in the West, but who really knows? The D-backs look pretty good. I'm not quite convinced the Reds are World Series material, but they're going to be a very dominant team. And I can't underrate anyone in the NL East, either the Nationals, who even now, right now, doesn't have Soto due to COVID, but also the Braves. So I'm kind of really tied. I'm not sure. I would like to think the Dodgers go back, but my gut also says this is going to be an NL East year yet again in the World Series.
I actually agree with you in terms of the World Series. I think the NL East, like I said last Monday, I think the Braves have a bit of a leg above the rest of the field in the NL East, and then the Nats, Mets, and Phillies are all right there. Marlins are way behind. I do agree that I think the Yankees are going to make it to the World Series, but I think this is another National League East year, and I have the Atlanta Braves with that young team. Now they've gotten experience the last 2 years in the playoffs, playing some very important baseball games. I think they're going to win the World Series this year. I think it's going to go down to 6 or 7 games because the Yankees have that deep staff, but the Braves have a lot of young talent. So I've got Atlanta winning the World Series. I see Zoe shaking her head right next to me.
I was going to say, guys, I'm sorry to break it to you, but I think the NL is easier to pick than the AL. I think the AL is more of a toss-up. I think in the NL, there's no way the Dodgers don't go to the World Series. It's not possible. Even without David Price, because he's sitting out, they're still so good. They're so dominant and overpowering. There's just no way. Maybe someone comes close, but I don't think there's any way that someone beats them going to the World Series, especially because in the playoffs, that's when they really shine. That's when the Dodgers come alive.
I don't know if they really do shine, though, Zoe, because, you look, sure, they made so many consecutive World Series, but we all know Clayton Kershaw is a disaster in the postseason. And another thing to mention is this. I'm being utterly honest here. This is just yet another typical Dodgers season where you go and you get a star. And I understand Mookie Betts is an exception because there was debate the other day between all of us of who's the second best player in baseball. I personally don't think it's Mookie Betts, but that's a different story. However, Mookie is just another star that the Dodgers picked up, and the story will tend to continue, paying a lot of players money to come play in LA, but yet the success is minimal to none. This team's pitching staff hasn't really changed. Sure, you added David Price, but now he's not playing this year. And other than Clayton Kershaw, who again chokes in the clutch, I don't know really what they have. Sure, Walker Buehler looks promising. Ross Stripling's now converted into the bullpen. And who knows what Kenley Jansen's going to do. The man's fallen off the face of the earth in the past 2 years. And I don't even know what to think about that offense. Can Justin Turner stay healthy? I don't really know, as well as, Seager. So I don't really know what to expect about the Dodgers. On the AL side, I feel it's more of a matchup because the Twins, this is a powerhouse offense, looks promising. No one knows about the Indians and the White Sox. They're going to probably surpass expectations by a far shot. And in the AL West, you can't count out the Houston Astros. Cheating or not, that roster is stacked.
No, what about the
Angels? I don't know
Angels?
how the Astros are going to be this time around. And one thing I do have to side with Tim on, though, with the Dodgers, also adding to him, is they've had a lot of clutch games in the last few years that they've lost. Think about the 18-inning game against the Red Sox that they did win, but other than that, they lost all the other games in that series. They ended up losing the World Series in 5 when many thought they were the better team. The Astros losing that crazy 13-12 game. And, they've gotten to the World Series because there's been a lot of young, inexperienced teams in the National League that they've taken control of. This time around, you've got teams like Atlanta who, they've got experience now in the playoffs. If Washington is there, they just won the World Series. So there's teams now that the Dodgers don't necessarily have a leg up over that they typically did in past years.
I get that. But going back to Tim, what you were saying about Mookie Betts, the one thing I think is different about Mookie than other guys is that other guys can run a team. Mookie by himself cannot run a team. He's a better team player than he is like overall. He's not going to be like a Mike Trout who's going to bring your team wherever you go. Now, obviously, the Angels, I think that's another team, but we can talk about that after. I think that's another team that's going to be good. But I think with Mookie Betts is he's going to do better on a team where he doesn't have to be the main star to carry his team everywhere. That was one of the issues he had prior, is that he felt he had to carry his team wherever. But he really doesn't with the Dodgers, and I think you're going to see him shine because of that.
Yeah, but did he really feel like that he was the star that had to shine in Boston? I mean, you talk about guys like JD Martinez, who, I mean, he's absolutely electric with the bat. And then on the opposite side, too. Yeah, but but Aaron Judge, isn't Giancarlo Stanton, but yet he's still the face of the New York Yankees. It's just a matter of the name.
He was never the face the way Mookie Betts was.
Mookie Betts and Aaron Judge were both prospects with their respective teams. JD Martinez and Giancarlo Stanton both came over in trades.
Yeah.
So they weren't going to be the face of homegrown guys.
Indeed, but I understand what I'm saying is that she's saying that ultimately that he felt like he had to carry the team, but you have to remember the Red Sox just won a World Series a few years ago. And that was arguably the best offense we've seen. I mean, now you look at the Dodgers. In fact, this is probably the worst offense he's ever played for, and that's underplaying it because this Dodgers team is really good offensively, just as they are pitching-wise.
I mean, you just said they're good offensively and they're good pitching-wise. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah, but compared to the past teams he's played for, I mean, don't get me wrong, the Red Sox didn't make the playoffs last year. But when you turn around and look at that roster, I shouldn't say, I mean, in terms of correction, they're not going to make the playoffs this year. But that offense is still just, it's not, bad.
You might have big names, but if your guys are producing, Dodgers have guys who will go up and they will get hits and they will produce. That was something the Red Sox struggled with. They had big names, but those guys wouldn't always go out and produce consistently. So Mookie Betts probably felt like he had to be the one producing.
But how can you say someone's not producing consistently when the team as a whole is top 5 in average every single year? I mean, the Red Sox have literally almost led Major League Baseball in the last 10 years in batting average alone.
Yeah, but you also mentioned the last 10 years. It's been a long time. These guys are also starting to get older on the Boston Red Sox as well, whereas the Dodgers, they keep having new guys coming up. Gavin Lux isn't even going to be on the Major League roster, at least to start the season, but he could come up and make a big impact. And, Dustin May pitching, Will Smith, Kyle Garlick, they've got a lot of really talented young guys. But I want to shift over to the other Los Angeles team that Zoe mentioned, which is the Angels, which I agree. I think they're going to improve this year. I mean, Rendon, now Trout says that he is committed to play throughout the season. Albert Pujols, Shohei Ohtani, I mean, they've got a really good offense, but their pitching staff, I'm sorry, it's horrendous. I don't see how Hansel Robles is going to keep this streak alive going as like a really good pitcher because as people who've watched the Mets, we know what happens with him when he starts pointing to the sky, when he's giving up a bunch of home runs. Their starting rotation is going to struggle again. They really didn't improve much in that field. Dylan Bundy had a really disappointing last couple of years. I know he's coming to the Angels now. Maybe that adjustment will help, but I mean, they also have a history of bringing in guys who struggled with other teams to pitch for them, and they continue to struggle with them. And with how competitive the AL West is and how good of rotations Houston and Oakland have, I don't see the Angels going very far this year.
Well, then here's my question. Are you really saying that Joe Madden, for the first time in a long while, is going to finish below 500? Because, I mean, you can't underrate the value of Joe Madden now for this Angels team either. He is known for making bad players good. I mean, look at what he did with the Rays.
Yeah, but the Rays weren't a terrible team. I mean, they had a lot of talent. They had David Price, Longoria, Carl Crawford. I mean, that wasn't a completely empty roster. I mean,
neither is this Angels roster.
I mean, you have to remember, too, he turned the Cubs from nothing to a World Series team. He could do the same thing with the Angels.
Other thing, though, the one thing I will give you, the Angels do have some prospects coming up, but once again, they're all offensive guys. You can't just have a successful team with a bunch of guys mashing the ball. They need to find more pitchers, and they really didn't do that last offseason with bringing in Trevor Cahill and Matt Harvey. And this season with Dylan Bundy, I don't really know what to expect. Their bullpen has gotten better as the years have gone on, but you need at least a solid foundation in that starting rotation. And there's just so much uncertainty there. I mean, that's what makes me really nervous. And while they do probably have a better offense than Houston and Oakland, I mean, those two teams' pitching staffs are way more solid top to bottom.
I agree with you that the pitching's definitely, that's going to be the question mark. If the Angels can get their pitching together, they're going to go far. If they can't, they won't. But I just have trouble overlooking the offensive power because you see things like that. Like the balls have been juiced the past couple of years. They're still going to be juiced. We're going to see so many home runs out of that Angels team. And I don't think you can overlook that. If they're scoring a certain amount of game, you can give up other runs to other teams if your pitchers aren't there.
Well, yes and no, because, I mean, even if we look at it, and we've seen this now from postseasons past, Zoe, where, when it comes down to a World Series championship, it's pitching that tends to really overall prevail. And I know the Washington Nationals, let's be honest, was somewhat of an exception because they had arguably the worst bullpen in baseball until they turned it around and figured it out come October. But in past years, you look at Boston, how they won the World Series. That bullpen was dominant just as much as their offense. The Houston Astros, I know they faded over a while, but they had good starting pitching, add on a good bullpen, and able to shut out baseball. Yeah, no, it is an offensive game. They try to make it offensive, but, when it comes to the postseason, stars get shut down. If you really think about it, it's key role players that tend to come up clutch in big scenarios, especially in the World Series. So to me, if you're a team that wants to win a World Series, I'm not going to jump and say, yes, I know the Yankees are my favorite to win a World Series, but getting Garrett Cole is a huge addition because that's a pitcher that solved an issue. But if you turn around, for example, and you're even the Texas Rangers, that's a big addition to Corey Kluber. That I'm not saying that team's going to turn around and be a playoff team this year because they're still going through that process, but that they're a lot better than where they were compared to adding another bat, which, let's be honest, our offense wasn't that bad to begin with in the past either. So I really think the pitching, as you guys mentioned, is going to be the number one thing, but I just don't see it being a World Series type move or even a playoff move because bad bullpens, they tend to falter.
I get that. I mean, we just have to wait and see. But I get I get the excitement, but I also get the concern. So I'm conflicted. I want them to go far, but the pitching's definitely the issue.
Yeah, and I mean, pitching's going to be completely different this year in a 60-game season. We're not going to see, complete games have been dropping every year, but it's really going to drop this year with these guys, playing in just 2 or 3 summer camp games or whatever with the weird lineups and stuff. But, these guys are really going to have to stretch out, but it's going to be difficult. I don't see pitchers really going much more than 6 or maybe 7 innings, at least in the early part of the season. But I want to move forwards to another division that Tim brought up earlier, and that's the AL Central, because I think there is the potential to get multiple playoff teams. I had said I think the Indians are going to win this division, but Minnesota and the White Sox are going to be right there. And, they're going to be playing Detroit, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, a few terrible teams they can really beat up on. But a 3-horse race. Zoe, I'll start with you. Who do you see as the best in that division?
Personally, the Twins are far and away the best team in that division, not even close. But you mentioned the Indians, and if Jose Ramirez can get his act together and produce, I think that Indians definitely have a chance to not only take the division, but maybe go a decent way in the playoffs. He can't carry them all the way, but I think they could go a game or two into the playoffs. But I definitely think that there's no surpassing the Twins. They're just, especially, all 3 of us have it called bot ball, right? We've announced this simulation. And I've gotten to know the Twins players through that. And I don't see how any other team in that division could surpass them.
Well, and, that's the other thing. Well, you see in bot ball right now, in fact, the Twins actually blew their division lead, if you think about it, because it's such a big lead early on. But, it's a good mix because, again, we were just talking about the Angels, Eddie, in what we necessarily see could be their kryptonite if they do make the playoffs. Well, I'm kind of debated because, again, I still think the Twins win the AL Central. But overall, I will say this. Their kryptonite will be their starting pitching. If their starting pitching to open up the year is not consistent, this is a team that will not do well in the postseason, just like how every time they get outed by the Yankees, come October. Now, I'm also going to turn on the opposite end. I really think the best bats, power-wise, in the AL Central this year is going to be the Chicago White Sox. I think this team, powered up, is going to hit homer after homer. But Lucas Giolito, that's your big question. He's your number one guy in that pitching rotation. Does he have another great year? And does every addition like Dallas Keuchel after that step up as well? And then, now the final team to mention, the Indians. You lost Corey Kluber, but that pitching staff isn't quite bad. In fact, I think they arguably have the best pitching staff in all of the AL Central. So I'm eager to see if that pitching staff lives up to its hype. And in its offense, as you also mentioned, Jose Ramirez finds its consistency and gets its act together, because it's going to create a very interesting race. And come the end of the season, and I mean this, and I really think this is going to be the closest division in baseball, but I really don't see these three teams being separated by more than 2 games come to the final game.
And the Indians are typically a streaky team. So, I mean, maybe it's a high-risk pick with me, but, in a 60 –
like the Mets.
Yeah, but, in a 60-game season, they could be really good, or they could really struggle against some of these teams. And remember, these guys are playing the NL Central, where 4 of the 5 teams are playoff contenders over there. So they're going to have some tough interleague games. But I just feel top to bottom, considering both pitching and hitting, I think the Indians have the best of the 3 AL Central teams. Obviously, like Tim said, there's a lot of wild cards there. Jose Ramirez had a really tough start last season, but I think he's going to be ready for the 60-game campaign. They still have Lindor there. They've got other young guys who have come in, like Oscar Mercado, who have made an impact. And, of course, the pitching rotation. I mean, no more Kluber, no more Bauer, but new guys like Shane Bieber, Mike Clevenger, Zach Plesac, and Adam Savali is a really good mix of young guys. Kind of reminds me of the Mets rotation when all their young guys came up a few years ago. So, and I think the Twins, they've got some power bats, and I mean, they got a nice offense and a lot of veteran presences like Nelson Cruz and Josh Donaldson out there. But I don't know how that's going to be really consistent when they struggle with the pitching. I think they're going to have another strong offense, but you need a good pitching staff out there. And right now, I only see 3 teams in the American League that have really solid pitching staffs. And that's the Yankees, that's Cleveland, and that's Houston. And I still think Houston's going to struggle with Dusty Baker now as their manager and after everything that went on. So I think the Yankees and Cleveland pull out ahead of anybody else in the American League.
The name of the game is just going to be pitching and who is on the better side of streakiness. That's really all the season's going to be. It's 60 games. It's like, what I believe, a 37% chance of the 37% of the actual season. It's just going to be who gets a good start. Whoever gets a good start is going to go far. Who gets a bad start isn't going to be there. It's so hard for us to even predict what's going to happen, because it just depends if players are on their games or they're having a bad day.
Well, and Zoe, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the other thing as well is that, really we get the taste of how this season is going to go really after the first week. Because, again, it's about streakiness. And you mentioned, are you going to find out if these guys are going to have a bad day or not? And, Eddie, you mentioned 3 teams as well that you feel is dominant. I still can't leave out the Tampa Bay Rays when this is all said and done. In terms
How do you feel about the Blue Jays?
Well, indeed, the Blue Jays, Hinch and Ryu, that's a big signing. But I just don't know if, again, that's still a youthful team like the Braves were a few years ago. I still think they need some time. But, apparently now they may be playing in Baltimore as their next home stadium. So that's, I'm very eager to see that. But, when you look at it for the Rays, this is a team that's always good at pitching. The offense is inconsistent, but that could be the difference maker as well early on. But again, as Zoe, I continue to emphasize the point that you mentioned. If you're off early, you're going to probably be off the first 2 weeks, and you're going to see some teams kind of pull away early on. And I'm more eager to see, I think, towards the end of the year, not really just also who wins the divisions, but perhaps the awards race.
Yeah, let's get into the awards race right now, because, yes, they are still going to be giving out the awards. There's no all-star game, but the MVP, Cy Young, and the like are still going to be going out. So I'm going to go through the 4 main awards that people consider. I'm going to start with Manager of the Year. And, I think there's going to be some really strong managerial jobs done in both the American League and the National League. And in the AL, I'm going to go with Terry Francona with the Cleveland Indians. I think he's really going to piece things together with a young roster. Like Tim was talking about with Joe Madden, I mean, he's an accomplished manager who has taken teams that didn't have much and has found success with them. I think he's going to have a good year there. And in the National League, I think Brian Snitker with Atlanta, I think they're going to have just such a strong campaign. I think he's going to be able to nail down an award. Tim, who are you going with?
I'm actually same exact predictions as you, believe it or not. I think Terry Francona gets Manager of the Year this year and Sticker on the NL side. I mean, if let's say the Braves do make the World Series, Eddie, and the Yankees do as well, it's the World Series that really fans kind of wanted a little bit 2 years ago, youth versus youth. But now these players are starting to come together, and I really think the Braves, after winning the division last year, but still not really getting it done, you want to beat the Nationals. You want to beat the Mets. You want to beat the Phillies, whoever's in that division, and you want to get vengeance. And I really think Snicker has a lot put in place to get this Braves team a very far way this year.
So
I would have a similar prediction, especially about the AL. But in the NL, I'll go with a little bit of a dark horse just to switch things up. You guys are going to be blown away by this. It's kind of completely crazy. But David Bell of the Reds. Just hear me out for a second. I think the Reds could actually be really good this year. They've always kind of flown under the radar. But if their offense is there and their offense performs, I definitely think the Reds could be a contender. And if they are, that's also going to make David Bell a contender for manager.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually had the Reds last Monday winning the NL Central. I just think they're a team, though, that's going to need a little more chemistry and would really benefit if this was a 162-game season to go further. But I think they're winning their division. But let's get into our second award. I'll let Tim start with his predictions here. Rookie of the Year. I know it's going to be a little different. Don't know which rookies are going to be playing. Frankly, there could be some drafted players from this past draft in June, like Spencer Torkelson, who might make their debuts here. But Tim, maybe you could throw us out some names that we got to watch for in the rookie.
I mean, that's a great question because I really haven't looked, I guess you could say, too much into the rookies. But I don't know. I mean, for Detroit, are they having Casey Mize come up and pitch? Do you know?
I believe they are.
Because he would be one of my favorites, obviously being a former number one pick. But, I mean, he has some nasty stuff. And that potentially could be our next Max Scherzer or Justin Verlander for Detroit when you think about it on the AL side. I mean, on the NL side, again, I don't really know. And here's another question, too. The acquisition that the Rays made, what is it, Satsasuko or something like that?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, does he qualify for Rookie of the Year technically?
I believe so, since he's a rookie to the major leagues.
Yeah, Satsugo, he may be another one as well that, I mean, he's really flown under the radar, but, man, does he have a power bat? I think he has the capability, but compared to, the younger guys that have gone through the system, and I don't really know on the NL side. I mean, if Dustin May gets called up and he finds some stuff as well, I think it could be a dual pitcher year. But that's again just me, but I haven't really honestly looked into the rookies too much.
Yeah, I'm going to just go briefly. In the American League, I agree if Casey Mize is out there. I mean, he's quite the prospect. He's been talked about for quite a while. If he plays, I think he's the best option. Joe Adell, also from the Angels, is a huge prospect for them and could be another bat in that lineup. For the National League, it's someone who played a little bit last year who's eligible for Rookie of the Year this year, and that's Aristides Aquino with the Reds. I mean, he's got an interesting batting stance. He can hit the ball far. He's a good defensive player, too. I think overall he's a really solid player, just including everything with his defense, his power, and his contact. I'm going to go with him for Rookie of the Year.
You guys both skipped over Luis Robert, and I think that might have been a mistake. I know he's been considered the next Mike Trout, and I'm being formal here, of course. And I don't know. I don't think you overlook him either with the White Sox. I mean, we've talked about the White Sox maybe being contenders, the bats they have there. He could definitely be in the running too.
So let's get into MVP. For the AL, I'm going to pick your friend Michael Trout. I mean, I've playing the full season now. And, he's finished top 4 in the MVP voting every single year. And in a 60-game season, he always gets off to hot starts. I think he's going to be in position. Of course, we could see some surprises since it's that shortened season, specifically in Cy Young, because, statistically, it could be very interesting, but we'll get into that after. NL MVP, I was going back and forth between a couple people, but I think the standout player in the National League this season is going to be a bit of a surprise here. I'm going with a veteran, and Joey Votto with the Reds. A lot of people have been talking about how he's going to put together a campaign. It's not like, because the last few years, I mean, it's been all on his shoulders and Brandon Phillips a few years ago. Now he's got all these young guys with him. They're bringing in some new bats. I mean, I think he's got the opportunity. He actually had a big uptick in his production last season from the past couple of years. He can hit for contact. He's the type of guy, I mean, I don't know if anybody's actually going to hit for 400, but other than the two middle infielders in New York, LeMahieu and McNeil, I think, he's got a good opportunity if someone could actually match that. But I think he's going to win the NL MVP. Zoe, who are you going with?
I'd agree with you on Trout 100%. I think that's one of those things where you think AL MVP and Trout's just the guy that pops into your head. I don't think there's anyone who – I mean, some people could come close, but it's obviously Mike Trout. And then if you go to the NL, I'm saying Acuna Jr. because I think he's going to be so dominant this year. You guys have talked about the Braves. I'm taking him – I mean, he's not really a dark horse, but I think he could pull out with the NL MVP.
And Tim, how about you?
I'm going to go a different route from you, Eddie. I mean, to be honest, the Votto thing kind of surprised me a little bit, but I'm going with two underdog MVPs this year. I'm going to first start in the NL side. I have Freddie Freeman. Now, just hear me out on this. Freddie Freeman, very solid and average, but you have to mention if the Braves go to the World Series, he's going to be a big push, that offense, always consistent, and I would say maybe the runner-up, as weird as this sounds, Nolan Arenado. I mean, I think you think about two guys that are right there. But, I mean, on the AL side, and this is where you guys are going to probably, go a little bit crazy, but I've got the most underdog MVP story. Edwin Encarnacion is going to be the MVP this year. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but have you ever seen Eddie Encarnacion's stats in the first 40 games of the season every year in his career since he started mashing home runs?
I know he gets off to hot starts. I will give you that.
And let me tell you something. This man, he can still hit for 30 and 100 with these. I know the average isn't quite pretty, but he is going to be mixing it up at first base as well as DH. And I know DHs don't really get too much love, but if he puts up some Nelson Cruz type numbers, especially on a very underrated White Sox team, and they propel to a playoff team, it would not surprise me if he's the MVP this year. But again, I can't go against also Mike Trout if he plays the full year. It would likely be Trout, but I'm going Edwin Encarnacion.
Well, some surprises there. And now the award that might be the biggest wild card this year because, you might have someone, getting 5 wins and winning the Cy Young this year just with such a short season. And, Jacob deGrom might only win 2 games, but I actually do not think – I think he's going to have a really good year. I think he's going to be right there, but I do not think he's winning his 3rd in a row. I actually have it for someone who I don't think is going to make the playoffs, but we're going to see him in action tonight, and that's Max Scherzer. I think he's going to win yet another Cy Young. I think he's a future Hall of Famer. He's been really good these past couple of years, and in a short season, I mean, he's going to be pitching against some tough lineups. Don't get me wrong. He's facing the Yankees tonight, but I think it's going to be neck and neck again between him and Jacob deGrom. But I think Max Scherzer is going to get the NL Cy Young and win that battle this year, despite the Nationals not making the playoffs, because I think he's going to be really committed to pitch well because now with no Soto and, of course, no more Anthony Rendon, no more Ryan Zimmerman, Harper's been gone for 2 years. I mean, that lineup's really starting to seem kind of small. So it's going to be interesting to see. And then in terms of the AL Cy Young, I was doing a lot of thinking because this is going to be interesting this year because other than Garrett Cole, there's not a lot of really just big standout pitchers. I don't think Verlander's winning back-to-back. I've been very high on the Cleveland Indians, and I'm going to go with the guy who won the All-Star Game MVP last year. That's Shane Bieber of the Indians, who has slowly become one of the top pitchers in the AL Central and in the American League in general. I mean, he kind of was under the shadows of Kluber and Bauer for a while, but I mean, if you look at his stats, even in the first half of the year to get him into that All-Star game, in a short span, I think he could be really solid. And like I said, the one benefit the Central has, they have 3 awful teams that they're going to be matching up with. Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Kansas City, that they're going to be able to take advantage of those lineups, which are not good at all. So I'm going with Shane Bieber for the AL Cy Young. Tim, who are you going with?
I'm going to have to agree with you on the NL Cy Young sides. I think, in fact, our 2 Cy Youngs, we're going to see him play tonight in Washington. And obviously that kind of gives you a hint of who my AL Cy Young is. But, again, I agree with you. I don't really see the Nationals having the year like they had last year. They could be a borderline playoff team, but they're going to have to surpass a bunch of expectations. And right now, especially facing a bunch of adversities without Soto. But Scherzer, I mean, it feels like he's been robbed the past few years because he's always consistent. Last year, he had his second out in lowest wins, but a sub-3 ERA every year. He's always a quick starter, knows how to get it done, and he strikes out a lot of hitters. Now, on the opposite side, you want to talk about hot starts? Garrett Cole is the hot start. The Yankees have a plan with him. Even if he loses today, it would not be surprised if he turns around and wins every other start after that. I mean, a guaranteed 10-plus strikeouts a game, comes out, and he is firing with a purpose for the Yankees. He's at home now. He wants to start it off. And let's be honest, when's the last time we saw Cy Young in the Bronx? I would love to see Garrett Cole get it done for the Yankees.
That was my pick, too. Garrett Cole all the way.
And what about the National League, Zoe?
National League was a little bit of a toss-up. I have my bias, so, I want to say Jacob deGrom, but I think it could really go a different way. I think it could go Jacob deGrom if he has a good season and starts off strong, but I think it's hard because I know your defense behind him has been unpredictable, and the preseason games for the Mets, I'm sure you saw, it was a travesty, the errors that happened. It was like watching my high school baseball team play. They're so bad. It was literally like watching that. I was like, what's going on? So I think if the defense can be there for him, and if he can get the job done, I think it's Jacob deGrom.
Yeah, clearly it's not about the wins, but I mean, he could surrender runs with the defense. I mean, left field, whoever's playing out there, if it's Dominic Smith or Cespedes, that's going to be a train wreck out there.
So bad.
Robinson Cano in the middle infield can make some great plays, but can also make some really bad ones. Ahmed Rosario is a good shortstop, but he
fields the ball the right way.
Yes, and then, third base with McNeil should be solid. Hopefully that Max Moroff guy with his, 3 errors isn't back, but we'll see. The Mets also just brought up, a bunch of middle infielders onto their roster, so I don't really understand that.
I saw that, too. I was so confused.
Gourmet made the Major League team. I don't understand that, but anyway. So that's going to wrap up our awards segment. Now, one more thing I want to do on the baseball end, and then we'll get into a little football to wrap things up. I want to do our predictions for the 2 games tonight. I mean, season starts tonight, fun games, and we're going to start with the first one. Yankees and Nats, Cole versus Scherzer. Dr. Anthony Fauci there to throw out the first pitch. Should be fun in Washington. Zoe, who's your pick to win tonight?
I got to go Yankees. As much as it pains me to say it, I got to go Yankees. I think just to start the season, they have the stronger team, especially with the Nationals losing Juan Soto for tonight. That's a little scary for them. I know Scherzer's always dominant, but I want to see Garrett Cole on the mound in New York. I want to see what happens. And I just think, especially with the Yankees have players healthy, that's always been their struggle, right? Keeping the players healthy. Right now, they have a majority of their players healthy. I want to see what they can do with them.
Tim, how about you?
Well, as Zoe just said, and I hope she doesn't jinx it, the Yankees are healthy going into this game and quite frankly have all the cards in their favor with Garrett Cole going on the mound, especially as I mentioned prior with Juan Soto unfortunately catching COVID-19. But again, it's Max Scherzer. The man is literally the wild card, just like Jacob deGrom is. You have no idea what can happen when he's out there on the mound. I think it's going to be a low-scoring ball game, but my prediction is the Yankees hit a first-inning home run, probably Aaron Judge. If not, it'll be somewhere in the middle of the lineup, and that will be the score for majority of the game. Expect less than 7 hits on both sides, and I really think it comes down to a safe situation. And the Yankees, by the way, without Aroldis Chapman, will have to expose who their closer is going to be, but I have the Yankees winning this one.
I agree with the strategy, but not the winner, Tim. So I think the Nationals are winning opening night. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I do think an early home run from someone in that Washington lineup. I don't know who. Maybe even like a Howie Kendrick kind of person. Maybe a surprise. I think Garrett Cole's going to pitch really well, and I think he's going to have a great year. And so will Scherzer. I think it's going to be low scoring, but I think today the Nats will be jacked up, playing at home. No fans, but, we'll get to hear the fake crowd noise pumped in. But, they're going to be a strong team, and they're going to be excited, getting their World Series rings, the pennant going up, everything at Nationals Park before the game. So I think they're going to win this one. I think the Yankees are going to win the rest of the series, but I think they'll win opening night. So let's get into the nightcap that not as many people are talking about. the Dodgers, who, by the way, have just been absolutely obliterating the Diamondbacks the last couple days in the summer camp games, and we're up 6-1 in the second inning in both of those games. Bellinger, the recently inked deal with Mookie Betts, they'll be in action against the rival San Francisco Giants. Zoe, I'll start with you. Who's your pick?
Why is this even a question? I don't understand. Dodgers all the way. Look, the Giants they have some veterans, but mostly they're a young team, and their team those players aren't ready, especially versus a seasoned team like the Dodgers now. Still young, but definitely more seasoned veterans. I don't think it comes close tonight.
Tim?
You know what? I'm feeling San Francisco. Now, let me tell you something. No, just let me tell you something. I would love to see the Dodgers go out and start well with Clayton Kershaw, but there is just something about that young Yastrzemski guy that makes me kind of start
Hall of Fame in his blood.
Even indeed, but it makes me want to think that San Francisco can get it done on the prime time game to open up the year. I'm really excited. I mean, the Giants, again, who knows? It's an even year, right? I'm not going nuts. It's 2020. Just saying, I know the streak ended a while ago, but you never know. The team could come out of nowhere and be pretty good this year. But I think, again, like the first game, guys, we're going to see a low-scoring matchup. I mean, Clayton Kershaw is a given. He never allows really more than 3 runs. And, I mean, this is the first time in a while we're seeing Johnny Cueto in a healthy form, that is. So this could be a really neck-and-neck game going all the way down to the wire as well.
I like your idea of the nice San Francisco story, Tim, but I really don't think you're even close. I mean, the Dodgers are such a strong lineup now. Mookie Betts is going to be there for maybe the rest of his career. Cody Bellinger right there. I mean, I don't know what to expect with Johnny Cueto. Yeah, I mean, that was 5 years ago when he was with Kansas City and doing good in the World Series. That was 10 years ago when he was the young, really hotshot guy with the Reds. I mean, he's been so hurt in recent years. And the Giants, I mean, they have some young guys like Yastrzemski, but this is also such an old team. They haven't changed the lineup since like 2012, and I don't know what to expect. No Buster Posey, too, this season. That's important to mention. But I think it's going to be Dodgers all the way tonight. So 2 games tonight. Rest of the season kicks off tomorrow. It should be fun. Before we wrap up here, though, we do have Zoe here, who's a pretty passionate Detroit Lions fan.
Oh, yeah.
I want to ask her about her expectations in this NFC North. With Matthew Stafford still there again, you got Jeff Okudah in the draft. I mean, that'll be an enhancement to the defense, especially losing Darius Slay. But, I mean, Vikings are still a good team. Bears brought in Nick Foles. I don't know what to expect there. But the Packers, even though they brought in Jordan Love, they still have Aaron Rodgers. They still have a great receiving core, great defense. I'm sorry to say, I don't see where Detroit's going to be fitting in that NFC North this year.
No one ever does. No one ever does. No, I think it's definitely a hard division. It's becoming one of the harder divisions. It reminds me a little bit, honestly, we've been talking about baseball this whole time. It reminds me a little bit of the NL East. But in the NL East, the thing is you don't usually have one team that's way above the others always, and that's always been the Packers in the NFC North. The thing is that Aaron Rodgers is getting old. He's less mobile. We saw him go down with injuries in the past couple of years, so we know he's not immortal, you know? And then you also have a new head coach. So that also sucks for the Packers because it depends how the scheme works for them. They lost their seasoned head coach. And then in terms of the Vikings, you lose a couple key players. Your defense falls apart a little bit. Xavier Rhodes is gone. On offense, you lose Diggs. The Lions gave up any chances they had when they gave away their Diggs, Quandre, last year. I think it helps that you give away Slay because Slay is one of those guys who plays half hurt a lot of the time. He always has like a quad or hamstring thing, he says, and it brings the whole defense down because if you have him partially healthy, you're going to put him in. He's a Pro Bowler, but you might do better without him. Love Calvin Johnson to death, my favorite guy ever, but when he left, the Lions started to do better because you don't feel like you have to throw the ball to him. Same thing with Slay there.
Well, 2 things. First off, I will say this. Obviously, you mentioned Slay always playing hurt, and not to take a dig at you, Eddie, but needless to say, that's a secondary that is always hurt in Philadelphia. So I'm just saying.
Well, he fits in with that, you know.
But the other thing as well is, I mean, Zoe, do you feel it's safe to say this is it? Matt Patricia is done after this year as the Detroit Lions head coach?
It's this year he was given an ultimatum by Queen Martha, who retired now, but she has handed it down to her daughter. It was win or go. That was it. So this year is just a win. They saw that in the draft. The reason they picked Okudah is because they had to fill that cornerback position. Otherwise, you may have seen them go for someone else a little more risky. I thought they might have gone Isaiah Simmons, someone that's going to be a player for your future, but they picked Okuda, who's going to have an impact now. If he doesn't win this year, he's out, and I think Bob Quinn could be out too.
Can we find Matthew Stafford a receiver, please?
Are you joking? You have Kenny Galladay.
Kenny Galladay? Come on now. He's just average.
You're joking.
Kenny Galladay is Sterling Shepard 2.0. He's a number 3 on anyone else's team.
Okay, he's a huge guy with great hands who has great tracking of the ball. He's going to catch it anywhere it's thrown to him. Plus, you have Matthew Stafford, who, for the first half of the year, or the first, 6 games he played with a broken back, multiple broken bones in his back, and still played at an insanely elite level. He's going to come back this year stronger than ever, and you're going to see Kenny Galladay go off, okay? I'm just saying now.
All right, but if the Lions had a great receiving corps at some point, I think Stafford would be recognized as a great quarterback. He isn't, because other than Calvin Johnson,
You don't have an offensive line.
haven't had anything in 12 years with him.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. Is he Megatron? Because to me, that's what you're making him sound like. But I guess that's how low the expectations is or have been in Detroit for a very long time. And as a Giants fan, I'm starting to personally feel it too, because, man, I've never felt expectations lower than the New York Jets in my life until this year.
Okay, well, you guys, right, got Golden Tate. So the Giants got Golden Tate, right? When the Lions had Marvin Jones, he's a little older now, I know. Marvin Jones, Kenny Galladay, and Golden Tate, that was a golden 3, right? And the problem is that they don't have a run game. Last year they tried to get one going. Kerryon got hurt. They brought in 6 other freaking running backs who all got hurt. Ty Johnson, one after the other, just crumbled. This year you get Swift, who comes in, who's another elite runner. So you have Kerryon and you have Swift. You choose between the two of them. You have a guy who can catch passes in the backfield, an elusive guy like Swift, that I think opens stuff for your wide receiving core. Plus, you signed Amendola to another year. So you have your slot receiver. So you let Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay do their work downfield.
So Swift is the new Theo Riddick, to say the least.
At least he's not Amir Abdullah.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And I don't mean to switch topics, but I do want to say this. Did you guys see the Fox thing that they're going to add fake fans onto their broadcasts?
Why are they doing that? It's going to look like a Major League Buckball game. Why are they
Literally.
10,000 virtual fans in the stands? And I'm telling you, this is just a precursor. Imagine week 1 of the NFL. It's going to be idiotic with how they try to fill up, empty stadiums, trying to fill up.
Did you hear what they said?
In Dallas. I mean, this is going to be so stupid for 3
The NFL PR person yesterday, I forget who it was, Adam Schefter reported it after, but he originally gotten from a guy who covers for NFL, for NFL PR Corona. He said that they're going to let people in, but apparently with masks. That's how the season's going right now. They said, there was an announcement that said anyone who comes to the stadium has to wear a mask, fans included. So I think they're leaning towards having fans, which in its own sense pretty much sums up the NFL and who the NFL belongs to, because the people that watch the NFL.
But, the other interesting point here is that we've already seen some teams, especially locally for us, the Giants, the Jets, the Eagles, have already all said no fans this season. That's it, regardless of what the NFL says. And it's just weird how they've left it up to the teams, whereas any other sport, it's been Adam Silver, Rob Manfred, Gary Bettman. They're the ones speaking out. Roger Goodell, you haven't heard from him in months.
You want him in your conversation? He's Roger Goodell.
But, you have someone, as a higher-up trying to organize things.
He gets food for a reason.
Yeah, but at least the NFL season's starting on time, to say the least. I understand they canceled the preseason, but let's not get this wrong. Rob Manfred is arguably the worst commissioner the world has ever seen in any sport.
The piece of metal World Series trophy. But I mean, we can see Zoe's pretty passionate about football, so I think we're gonna have to bring her back for week 1 of the NFL to hear some more takes, not just about why Kenny Galladay is the next DeAndre Hopkins, but
I'll be back.
All right, so that's gonna wrap things up today on Sports Speak. We hope you enjoyed our baseball preview. For Zoe, I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
We'll see you next time.